On the cutting edge of the new mainstream, Christine Upchurch is passionate about bringing together science, psychology, and spirituality in a way that can be applied to our everyday lives for true transformation. The Christine Upchurch Show, stellar conversations to illuminate your journey, engages some of the most inspired visionaries on the planet in lighthearted, lively dialogue. Join us as we explore the expansive nature of reality in a down-to-earth way, offering you insights and tools, empowering you to become that bright light you're meant to be. Now, here's your host, Christine Upchurch.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm so glad you've joined us here today. You may be listening live on 1150 AM KKNW over the airwaves, or perhaps anywhere around the world on Transformation Talk Radio over the internet. You might be listening after the fact on one of the, dozens of places this ends up as podcasts, including ChristineUpchurch.com. But I tell you, whenever and wherever you're listening from, you're going to be really glad you joined us. I'm so excited. I feel like a kid waiting for Christmas morning, and Christmas morning has finally arrived because we are talking to two VIP researchers who have each been on the show before, and they're here together to talk about something really fascinating. But before I tell you more about that, I want to say hello to Mr. Benny Mathers, who does his technological magic to allow these conversations to be heard by you. Good morning, Benny.
Hi, and just in the nick of time for today. We've got a lot going on.
We do.
In the world.
We do.
Prayers and thoughts to everyone down in the East Coast, Southeast, of course, with Hurricane Florence. It is ravishing things right now. So it is.
And the good news is the winds died down, but the bad news is the storm is so slow and the swells are so high that it's incredibly dangerous.
Of course, and they've been saying, like, if you haven't left, good luck and or you can't.
Yeah.
I mean, I would never imagine that happening to us around here. So, I hope everyone did get out when they had the opportunity. If those trying to challenge it, good luck to you, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I remember
tough.
Hearing a story about a man who was an owner of a pet store, and he had something like 30 different animals in his pet store, and he decided the pet store, because of its location, was not a safe place to leave these animals. So he took them all home. And I guess it would be rather difficult to evacuate with 30 animals.
Yeah, hopefully they're all like not poisonous. That kind of came to my mind right away. I hope they're all safe. And I mean, I hope they can go back to the store and people can see them and have good times. But
yeah, and I'm very concerned about the animals, the farm animals.
Yeah,
some of them trapped, and it's just it's sad every which way.
There'll probably be some big cleanup, but everyone's going to look out for everyone, and that's what we want.
Yeah, and there's some great first responders and people who really do care. I also saw something about animals where there were people waiting in line in order to take a shelter animal home, so they could sort of rescue them because the shelter
temporarily,
temporarily, which
that's
I thought
nice
was
of them
fascinating.
To do that.
So
see, people helping out even our furry friends.
Yes. So in the midst of what seems to be negativity and chaos, there's a lot of good in this world. I'm so excited about our guest today. I have to tell you, decades and decades ago, when I first started on my sort of conscious journey, I came across a book called Life After Life that blew my mind by Dr. Raymond Moody, and it was an exploration of near-death experiences. He's the one who coined the term. And I got fascinated by that, and I read all I could read about it, and fast forward many years, he's been on the show, and he's written a lot of books here. So he is a best-selling author of 11 books, which have sold, get this, over 20 million copies. That book, Life After Life, I was just talking about, completely changed the way we view death and dying. And that book alone has sold 13 million copies worldwide. His latest book is fascinating, called Glimpses of Eternity, sharing a loved one's passing from this life to the next. He's a leading author, and he lectures on topics, including near-death experiences, of course, but death with dignity, life after loss, surviving grief, finding hope, reunions, visionary encounters with departed loved ones, and so on and so forth. He's got numerous things he talks about. He's got a private practice of philosophical counseling, and interestingly, he's got a PhD in philosophy, and he's also an MD. He's a frequent media guest. He's been on Oprah Winfrey, I think, 3 times now, which is just really exciting, as well as all over the place, including MSNBC and ABC, and he's even on the little Christine Upchurch show, which I'm so excited. But that's not all. Wait, there's more. We're going to be talking to Lisa Smartt as well, and she's, again, been on the show before. She is the author of Words at the Threshold. She's a linguist, educator, and poet, and she founded the Final Words Project, which is an ongoing study devoted to collecting and interpreting the mysterious language at the end of our lives. She co-facilitates workshops about language and consciousness with Raymond Moody at universities, hospices, and conferences, and we're so grateful to have them both here today. Welcome, Raymond, and welcome, Lisa.
Hello, Christine.
Thank you so much. It's really good to be here.
You know, Raymond, you coined the near-death experience phrase, and it's become rather, ubiquitous in discussions of dying and death. Before we get into the details of this latest research, can you just share with our listeners the commonality of what your subjects talk about experiencing after they die, and they can share when they come back?
Yes, and I should say that I got interested in this subject through Plato, who was very interested, as were the other early Greek philosophers, in these stories of people who apparently died and came back. So I found out about this when I was 18 years old, and then, 3 years later, I met an actual human living person, Dr. George Ritchie, who was a psychiatry professor who had such an experience. So since that time, I've interviewed thousands of people from all over the world who come close to death and have these stories to report when they are revived. And basically, as we all know now, they tell us that they leave their body and they go through a passageway into what seems to be another world of comforting, peaceful light in which they see relatives and friends of theirs who have passed away, and then undergo panoramic memory, in which all of the events of their lives are displayed around them instantly, and they come back from this with a whole new view of life, that whatever they were chasing before, that what is important in life is learning to love, and often also to think that they come back sort of committed to try to understand the world better and to seek knowledge.
Interesting. And from what your research has shown, it seems like most people aren't really thrilled about coming back, right? Because it's such a pleasant place there.
That's right. People, almost invariably people say they didn't want to come back. They may choose to come back when given the choice, but they say that for themselves they would rather have stayed, but they came back on behalf of their children is the usual reason.
Right. And your research has helped people to not only get a sense of what is to come for all of us, but it's reassured us that death is not the end, which shifts our perspective about life.
It does, and I want to say that about this, Christine. People have the right to make up their minds for themselves about this, because really nobody can say with positivity.
Of course.
And I have myself reached the conviction that, to my utter astonishment, there is an afterlife. And I think there are entirely new ways to prove this. And at the same time, I think that this is not something that somebody should take somebody else's word for, right? This is a very complex problem that everybody has to work through for themselves. So I'm not convinced. I'm not trying to convince anyone else. I'm just explaining to everyone where I have come to on this, so that they can know my prejudices and presuppositions more than anything else.
Right.
Can I say one thing? This is Lisa. I've known Raymond about 6 years, and when I met him, he still wasn't fully convinced. I mean, here is a man who is very open-minded, but is also by nature, in the best sense of the word, skeptical, right? He's looking to get as much information as possible before making a final decision on anything. And it was in the time that I've known him, about 3.5 years ago or so, that he said that he had now become fully convinced. And so it was for me quite remarkable to watch Raymond's process after 50 years now of investigating this area, and suddenly seeing for him that process of feeling that he could actually say, I am convinced now.
Well, I think that a good scientist is always skeptical, not closed-minded, but skeptical and discerning. And I know that, Lisa, you've been looking at it sort of, through observation and scientifically in certain ways, not so much about the people who come back, but the people who die, and as they're dying, the things that they say. So tell us a little bit about what brought you to that research.
Well, what brought me to I never thought, I read Raymond's book when I was 17 and loved it. And like you, it just opened up my eyes and made me wonder about so many things. And I had never imagined I'd be on the phone with him. But what happened is my father died relatively quickly over a 3-week period. And I was trained in linguistics, so I was very finely tuned to language. And as my father was dying, I just heard these remarkable shifts in his language. There were changes. And I just started writing everything down because as a linguist, that's what I was trained to do, right?
Sure.
You hear language that's baffling or new, you write it down. And one part of it was different types of language, but also different kinds of perceptions. So Raymond had mentioned earlier about one of the common things that people describe in near-death experiences is seeing the deceased, seeing loved ones.
Sure.
And so one of the things that appeared in the language of my father is he started talking about people in the room, that the room was crowded with people. And he even started talking about angels, which was remarkable because he was a hardcore skeptic. So that's what brought me to this investigation and ultimately to meeting Raymond and working with him.
Yeah, and it's fascinating the work you're doing together. And Raymond, I'm really excited about your book, Glimpses of Eternity. We have to go to a quick break, but stay tuned for more mind-blowing information that goes well beyond this typical near-death experience.
Are you ready to shift gears from spiritual seeker to spiritual rock star? Let Nova Whiteman be your aligning force that will help you navigate the ups and downs of this human experience. Tune in to Spiritual Alignment Radio with Nova Whiteman every second Tuesday at 12 p.m. Pacific on TransformationTalkRadio.com. For more, visit novawhiteman.com. That's NOVAWIGHTMAN.com.
Are you traveling most of your day? Do you want to take Transformation Talk Radio with you anywhere you go? Well, guess what? There's an app for that. Just go to the App Store on your Apple device or the Google Play Store on your Android and search Transformation Talk Radio. Catch all of our live shows no matter where you are. Thanks for listening.
On the cutting edge of the new mainstream, Christine Upchurch is passionate about bringing together science, psychology, and spirituality in a way that can be applied to our everyday lives for true transformation. The Christine Upchurch Show, stellar conversations to illuminate your journey, engages some of the most outstanding visionaries on the planet in lively dialogue to inspire you to become that bright light you're meant to be. Join Christine every Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific Time on KKNW, AM 1150, and Transformation Talk Radio.
Don't miss out on an opportunity to hear from Lou Paradise, health and vibrant living expert and founder of Topricin. Lou is a featured speaker at the New You Life Conference in Connecticut, Saturday, September 15th. Tickets are available now. For information and tickets, click the button on the homepage of louparadise.com. That's louparadise.com.
I'm Christine Upchurch, and this is a Stellar Reflections Minute. Years ago, when facing cancer, without any immediate treatment options, I sought healing by making various life changes. For a while, I followed a very restrictive diet. I often found myself obsessing about which foods were good and which ones were bad. Then one day, I realized I was consuming foods based on fear of not getting well. But I didn't want to make choices out of fear anymore. I decided it was far better for my immune system if I allowed myself to experience the joy that came from, say, eating frozen yogurt, than it was for me to ingest the fear that came from avoiding it. Now, instead of choosing healthy habits based on fear, I try to make choices because they feel right and ultimately bring me joy and ease. How many of your healthy habits are really based on fear? Please visit stellarreflections.com or call 425-999-9836. That's 425-999-9836. Welcome back to the Christine Upchurch Show here on KKNW in the Seattle area and Transformation Talk Radio around the world. Okay, now I'm fascinated, Raymond, by this book, Glimpses of Eternity, because, okay, so from a scientific perspective, you know, I've got a background in as a statistician. You know, I've worked in a research realm. Of course, I've also worked in energy healing, so I've worked in in alternative healing as well. But when I hear about the near-death experiences, people, you know, individually sort of going to that other side, so to speak, and coming back, there's a part of me that's just a little skeptical that says, well, what happens if our brains just sort of create this stuff?
Yeah.
Glimpses of eternity, something different is happening that goes beyond the individual who's passing. Can you share some examples of what you're talking about? Yes, that's right,
Christine. It's basically this viewpoint that you hear from people saying, oh, these things are just caused by the oxygen deprivation to the brain.
Uh-huh.
And I have always known since very early in my research that that's just not the case. The reason is I learned from one of my own medical school professors my first year in medical school. She had the same experience, not when she herself was ill, but when she was unsuccessfully trying to resuscitate her mother.
Uh-huh.
And as her mother died, she got out of her own body and saw her mother's dead body down below in her own body, and saw the presence of her deceased mother there with her.
Wow.
And saw her mother recede into this light and being met by relatives and friends of her mother's who had died, and then coming back to her own body. And I've heard hundreds and hundreds of these. So something else is going on. And in this time at the bedside of the dying, amazing things happen. Oh. And one of them that I was got interested in medical school is this phenomenon that Lisa is investigating, because despite the fact that I'm known for this near-death thing, my background in philosophy had to do with logic and philosophy of language and ancient Greek philosophy. And so I had studied, and also interest in Dr. Seuss and Lewis Carroll and the nonsense literature of children. So when I got into medical school, I began to see that in the last few days and hours of life, that people very commonly will start talking in this very enigmatic language and often quite nonsensical. Uh-huh. And the family members who are left behind are very impressed by this. And they say something like, I knew even when he was saying it that it was nonsense, but somehow in the back of my mind, I felt I kind of halfway understood it. Well, I was kind of working on this about 6 or 7 years ago when Lisa and I met, and she really had that experience with her father, so she took right up on this and has come up with an incredible piece of work. And I think that I am quite sure that by studying the language communications of the dying, which are very often enigmatic, we are going to be in a situation where we will actually be able to track the mind through the dying process, hopefully over into when they enter into a transcendent state of existence. So that's my conjecture. I think this is very important work that Lisa is doing.
So, Lisa, tell us a little bit more about some other stories or some generalities about this shifting of language and verbiage as people are dying.
Well, one of the things that we see, people go from speaking very literal language, give me a cup of water, or, nice day outside, or whatever, just literal language. And it generally moves towards a continuum of being more metaphorical and more nonsensical. So meaning becomes looser, right? There's less literal meaning oftentimes.
Okay.
So people may start speaking in metaphors, talking about a trip that's coming. And if you look, there's this continuum from literal language to nonsense that makes generally no sense. So someone might say something like, yes, I'd like scrambled eggs, but where would you reappear? Right? That's nonsensical. Right? That's nonsensical language. Well, one of the reasons why Raymond and I have worked together is Raymond's done research on different types of nonsense as a philosophy student and throughout the years. And we know that there are different types of nonsense. Nonsense has the same kind of patterns that literal and sensical language has, but no one's ever taken the time to look at what those patterns are.
I'm confused, so tell me more.
Well, so when people are dying, you see just, as I said, different kinds of nonsense. First is the kind of nonsense that has to do more with situations. Like my father saying, the angels are here. So that's the kind of nonsense where it's just based on the situation. People say, oh, come on, there's no angels here, for those people who don't believe that angels might be in the room, right? That's situational.
Right.
But then there is linguistic nonsense where the words, for example, something like, oh, sir, get the dollar roofing. It doesn't make sense. But we also know that nonsensical language oftentimes corresponds or associated with transcendental states, right? So, for example, speaking in people describe these ecstatic states when they're speaking really completely nonsensical syllables. So what I have found over bringing together different fields of research is that as people are moving towards more and more nonsensical language, which often occurs, not always, but often as people are dying, that language is oftentimes associated also with states of mystical states, which are considered more what people call right brain, right?
Sure.
Or those kinds of states, and that nonsensical language seems to be very closely connected to musical states and mystical.
Yes, and see, there's a difficulty in ordinary language because people don't like that word nonsense. But they love nonsense. Dr. Seuss, Lewis Carroll, doo-wop music, and there are many spiritual dimensions, like in glossolalia, speaking in unknown tongues, and koan, which are nonsensical, like what is the sound of one hand clapping, but which nonetheless bring about profound altered states of consciousness. So what Lisa and I have decided to do is to, you know, Christine, that there is just so much in the field that the three of us are in. There is a great deal of pretense and charlatans and imposters and people who are not very serious.
Sure.
So what Lisa and I have decided to do is to create a sort of online educational portal so that we can talk about all these big things: near-death experiences, shared death experiences, mystical experiences, the unusual language of the dying. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to have an online forum open, and we have some great people to interview lined up. We're going to interview Evan Alexander will be our first one.
Fabulous.
And just the most phenomenal, one of the most phenomenal cases of a near-death experience I've ever heard, of a very fine graphic artist who was essentially killed in an accident and lost his leg, but survived. But in the accident, his wife was killed. Oh, and so he had a profound near-death experience. And to make a long story short, the trauma surgeon who saved his life empathically participated in his shared death experience. And we also have coming Dr. Anthony Cicoria, who is a PhD in physiology and an MD degree and an esteemed professor of orthopedic surgery at NYU, who had a profound near-death experience when he got struck in the neck by a bolt of lightning in 1996.
Oh, my goodness.
And got inspired by his near-death experience, strangely, to be a piano player. He got a fascination with the piano and has now, to make a long story short again, is now, in addition to being a professor of orthopedic surgery, is also a concert pianist. So we have some really interesting programs lined up.
Yeah, this does sound fascinating. And we have to go to another quick break. But when we return, we're going to talk more about near-death experiences, shared-death experiences, and the nonsensical language that probably makes a lot of sense in some realm. Stay tuned for more here on the Christine Upchurch Show.
Don't miss out on an opportunity to hear from Lou Paradise, health and vibrant living expert and founder of Topricin. Lou is a featured speaker at the New You Life Conference in Connecticut, Saturday, September 15th. Tickets are available now. For information and tickets, click the button on the homepage of louparadise.com. That's louparadise.com.
Calling all moms, it's time to awaken your vibrant, intuitive, loving self in every area of your life. Join host Debbie Pokornik as she shares thoughts, stories, and tools to help you stand in your power. Listen to Vibrant, Powerful Moms helping everyday women create extraordinary lives. Mondays at 2:30 Pacific, 5:30 Eastern. For more information about Debbie, visit empoweringenergy.com. That's empowering with letters NRG.com.
Did you know that all of the shows on the Transformation Radio Network are available as podcasts to stream or download?
Really?
Check us out. Go to transformationradio.fm. We have business shows, spiritual shows, energy healing shows, and pretty much everything in between. Something for everyone, guaranteed to inspire, educate, and transform. We are transforming the world, one listener at a time.
Conscious Confidence Radio, a timeless wisdom with Sarah Main. Tune in each month on Transformation Talk Radio and join Sarah on an adventurous journey to the deeper level of meaning to move beyond today's world of constant change, confusion, and uncertainty beyond the shadow of fear. This hit show explores key concepts such as confidence, values, and attitude in a dynamic way. To learn more about Sarah and her work, visit sarahmain.com.
Miss any shows during the week? Don't worry, we've got you covered. With the free Transformation Talk radio app, you'll have access to all of the past week's shows in the palm of your hand. Yes! Tune in to Transformation Talk Radio anywhere you go with our free app for any of your devices. Check out our app in the App Store and Google Play Store today.
On the cutting edge of the new mainstream, Christine Upchurch is passionate about bringing together science, psychology, and spirituality in a way that can be applied to our everyday lives for true transformation. The Christine Upchurch Show, stellar conversations to illuminate your journey, engages some of the most outstanding visionaries on the planet in lively dialogue to inspire you to become that bright light you're meant to be. Join Christine every Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific Time on KKNW, AM 1150, and Transformation Talk Radio.
Welcome back to the Christine Upchurch Show here on KKNW and Transformation Talk Radio. Oh, my goodness. I'm talking to Lisa Smartt and Dr. Raymond Moody, and we're having a fascinating conversation both on the air and off. Now, Lisa, you were just mentioning during our off-air conversation about what sometimes people will say something that doesn't make any sense, but it makes perfect sense within the context of their experience. Can you share what that line was?
Exactly. Well, Raymond's described several people in his research who have had near-death experiences will say, I've never felt as alive as when I was dead. Right? Well, based on my experience, that sounds completely nonsensical. But based on the experience of someone who's had an NDE, that's a very real, intelligible statement for them, right?
Right.
So nonsense has many facets, but one is this idea of self-contradiction, and that's a contradiction, right? And yet, in the literal reality we know, you can't. That makes no sense, and yet perhaps there are things. Well, very likely there are things that we can't even conceive of, and our language limits the way that we see the world. And nonsense offers a portal of a new way of thinking about things and discussing things and perceiving.
I know that there are some cultures. Certain tribal cultures that believe that our waking reality is like the dream, and our dreaming reality and our death reality are the true reality. So in a sense, that nonsensical actually makes sense within the context of that perspective.
That's the position I've arrived at when I was a very young kid. I mean,
really?
You know, in reality, if you really want to go by the reasoning process, all you have before you is your consciousness and patterns in your consciousness. And some people want to leap to the conclusion that because there are recurrent patterns in your experience or your conscious experience, then therefore that there is some external physical reality that causes that similarity in the patterns. But I don't buy it. I think it's just as easy to say, I don't know, that it's entirely possible that the patterns in our conscious experience are generated in some other way than by a physical reality.
Right.
There's a big controversy in science, or area of research in science right now, where they're trying to figure out some way if this thing that we're in is like a computer simulation. And I don't know about you guys, but I've decided, it is. This is, and I'm comfortable with that. That's the position that the Hindus reached too. That this thing we're in is kind of like a drama.
Yeah, and what's so fascinating to me is that on top of all that, we've got the science indicating that perhaps everything is happening simultaneously, and perhaps there are multiple layers of reality, so that there are like multiple timelines, and so there are existences in multiple places at the same time and multiple times in the same moment.
Well, people with near-death experience tell us that their experience took place in intersecting spheres of reality. They say that there's different layers of it, and that you can see into the physical realm, and you can see into a realm where people don't quite get it, that they're dead. They're kind of stumbling around and repeating something. And then there is an element I've heard from many people describe an entire realm of being that seems to be devoted to the pursuit of knowledge. And that of my friend George Ritchie, he said you can't even imagine if you try to in your mind condense Caltech and MIT and Yale and Princeton and Harvard and all of them into one institution. You can't even begin to imagine what this is like. But he said he saw in one area or one aspect of this institution of higher learning, he said that in which were cataloged or stored the holy books of the universe. And so,
is that like what some people refer to as the Akashic records? Do you think?
I don't know. I don't know the connection there, but I mean, I've just heard this from most of the people I've heard this from are just people who didn't have any interest in this kind of thing, but who just suddenly found themselves in an accident or having a cardiac arrest, and that feels that this was sort of thrust upon them.
So, Lisa, I know that you've been studying the linguistic aspect of people who are dying, and it seems by its very nature you're going to only be able to look at those people who are dying slowly. Have there been any instances where you've gotten information about somebody who's dying rather quickly and how their language has shifted?
Yeah, we have some samples and reports of people who have been in car accidents or have been shot, and people definitely displays the kind of language we're talking about, that it might be nonsensical or the one that's well known, though, it took place back in the 90s, but it's Sam Kinison, the comedian.
Right.
And he was in a head-on collision, and he just said, one of his friends witnessed this. He said, "I don't want to die, I don't want to die." And the person didn't know who he was talking to, but he was saying that out loud. And then the friend described that Kinison sort of cocked his head and said, but why? And after another pause or so, he just started shaking his head and said, okay. And then the friend who's with him said whatever voice that was talking to Kinison gave him this kind of the right answer, and suddenly it just felt like he was able to relax with it. Now, that isn't necessarily nonsense. That's more an experience of seeing or experiencing some kind of being. And then you have cases where people have been shot, where you do hear a lot of nonsensical. There was this criminal, Dutch Schultz, who said, do you remember the exact words, Raymond? Something...
well, you can't remember the exact words because it's so incoherent, but he was hilarious, and it was just... And, it has definite patterns, but, in the hospital, you hear this all the time, and when people are delirious, they go on and on and on, usually using words that make sense, but put together in combinations that just don't make any sense. And it's a fascinating phenomenon to observe because you're always sitting there trying to make sense of it, right, to see something behind it. But we know for sure that the language of the dying is very, very important and a kind of underexplored area of research.
Right.
And what's so fascinating is when people start writing down what their loved ones say, and as I did with my father for 3 weeks, and you capture that language that in isolation seems to make no sense, you can begin to find fascinating patterns. Now, some of the language is just completely nonsensical. That's the definition of nonsense, right? It doesn't make sense. But then there are also these patterns where people are telling stories over several weeks, perhaps, that come in little bits and pieces. So in isolation, make no sense. So for example, someone might talk about the boxing champion that just walked into his room.
Mm-hmm.
And then 3 days later, then he talks about how the boxing champion has now brought his son with him. And the story evolves and evolves. And it's so fascinating to hear the unfolding of these narratives that have that quality of the dream language.
Mm-hmm.
That I think that it seemed like you may have been making some kind of reference to, but that sense of kind of dream time language.
Right. And I know that within a dream, sometimes I'll wake up from a dream and I'll think it made perfect sense within the context of the dream. And
Yes,
yet, if I'm trying to make sense of it with my conscious waking mind, it doesn't make any sense.
That's a great example.
Yeah, yeah. I'm really fascinated by these shared death experiences. And when we return, Raymond, I'm going to want you to share a little bit more about some of the other experiences that people have had where they've found out information that has only been validated later. Stay tuned for more with the wonderful Lisa Smartt and Dr. Raymond Moody here in just a few moments.
Did you know that all of the shows on the Transformation Radio Network are available as podcasts to stream or download?
Really?
Check us out. Go to transformationradio.fm. We have business shows, spiritual shows, energy healing shows, and pretty much everything in between. Something for everyone, guaranteed to inspire, educate, and transform. We are transforming the world, one listener at a time.
Have you been seeing numbers like 111 and 222 everywhere you go? Do you feel that the universe may be trying to get your attention, perhaps offering a message of some sort? As it turns out, numerical patterns and certain types of geometry form the very fabric of our reality, from cells under a microscope to the astronomy of our night sky. At Stellar Reflections, we offer special sessions which tap into these patterns, designed specifically to support you on your journey. The 111 and 222 activations are sessions activating new patterns in your energy field, which in turn can help you create new patterns in your life. After just one session with a practitioner, either in person or via distance, clients report gaining greater clarity, becoming more intuitive, and honoring their inner truth as they move forward in their lives. Curious about what these transformational sessions might do for you? Call 425-999-9836 or visit stellarreflections.com. That's stellarreflections.com.
This is Peggy Snow, practitioner at Stellar Reflections, with a Stellar Reflections Minute. So many people these days are trying to find ways to relieve their stress. What happens to our breathing when we're feeling overwhelm and stress? When we tune in, we realize that we're either holding our breath or taking very shallow breath to signal the body that all is well, which most of the time it is. Sometimes all that is needed is a nice, deep breath to break the cycle. First, exhale to get all the stale air out by engaging the abdominal muscles and blowing gently. Next, take a nice full breath in, feeling it fill your body all the way down to your hips. Release fully and enjoy the freedom of movement. Notice how your body feels. Do you feel refreshed? Calmness is only a breath away. This has been a Stellar Reflections Minute. For more information about what we offer at Stellar Reflections, visit us at stellarreflections.com or call 425-999-9836. That's 425-999-9836.
Don't miss out on an opportunity to hear from Lou Paradise, health and vibrant living expert and founder of Topricin. Lou is a featured speaker at the New You Life Conference in Connecticut, Saturday, September 15th. Tickets are available now. For information and tickets, click the button on the homepage of louparadise.com. That's louparadise.com.
Welcome back to the Christine Upchurch Show here on KKNW and Transformation Talk Radio. Wow, this hour is flying by. I wish we had 2 hours to talk today. But Lisa and Raymond, I want you to share with our listeners how they can connect with you and about what's going on with your new project.
Yes. Lisa, you're better at address things than I am.
Well, we're creating an online platform called the University of Heaven. And, Raymond is getting a little older, and it's getting harder to travel. And he's got so much wisdom to share. And we wanted to create a legacy site so he'd be able to share all his work and also the work of all the people who have been mentored, like myself, by him. He's so generous with so many people. And Eben Alexander, Jeffrey Olson, Mary Neal, all these people have really followed in the footsteps of Raymond, right? He blazed the trail. So we want to create an online platform where people can come and teach, and we're going to do workshops and offer inexpensive webinars, live webinars, and recorded classes in all the topics that, shared death, near death, after-death communication, philosophy, final words. So we're just in the process of building that. We're launching September 20th, and we're very excited about it.
And what's the website?
It is theuniversityofheaven.com.
Terrific. That's theuniversityofheaven.com. September 20th.
Launched the 20th.
Very exciting. Now,
and I came up with that name, I'll have to admit, and it's supposed to be a little bit humorous, but it's a serious project. Our idea is to present really serious programs on this. That because there are just so many people out there who really take this seriously, and they are kind of sick, I think, of a lot of the silliness that goes on in this subculture. So,
yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so in your book, your latest book, Glimpses of Eternity, Sharing a Loved One's Passage from This Life to the Next, can you give us some more examples of what a shared death experience is like?
Yes. Basically, a shared death experience has the same elements and components as what we call a near-death experience. But the difference is that in a near-death experience, somebody comes close to death, like in an accident or an illness or a cardiac arrest, from which they are revived. In a shared death experience, the same phenomena happens, but it happens to somebody who is not ill or injured, but who happens to be there at the death of someone else. And it's a very common thing for bystanders at the death of a loved one to say that as the person in the bedside died, in the bed died, that the bystander seems to leave their own physical body and drift up partway toward this light with their dying loved one.
Wow.
And then they come back and they rejoin their own bodies, and their loved one has gone on. Or people say at the bedside that they see something leave the body of the dying person at death, often described as a golden or grayish light. Or people say that during the dying process they see of their relative, they see the room filled with light. They may tell us that they see apparitions of the dying person's dead relatives who seem to be there to come comfort them and help them through the transition. And they say that the room seems to change geometry. People tell me all the time, it's like they suddenly realized that they were looking at something in the room from an impossible angle. And most incredibly, people will tell you that as their dying loved one passed away, that they actually empathically co-lived the dying life review of the person who passed.
Whoa. So let's just pause here for a minute. So
I know.
People who've had
now,
near-death experiences talk about the life review. So what are you saying here?
I'm shocked. I mean, this is the most shocking thing I know about this, that apparently sometimes people empathically can co-live your life review. For some years, I thought it was the only cases I had were people who were very close to the person who died, which makes a certain amount of sense. But a few years back, we got a communication from a physician who told me that he was called to the ER to resuscitate a patient he had never laid eyes on. And so as he was going through the resuscitation, he said the images, which to him plainly were of his dying patient's life, sprang up around him, and he empathically. And this is just, I know, absolutely mind-boggling and a little bit shocking and embarrassing. Because to tell you the truth, I'm not looking forward to my own life review, much less having a spectator sit in.
Okay, so but is there any validation
who go through this? It's really incredible that it happens. Somebody listening to this will, say, yeah, that happened to me. It's, it's incredible, but that's what people say.
So have there been any cases when this has happened and there's been some validation that what they saw in the life review actually had happened?
Well, the most remarkable case of it was a woman in Carrollton, Georgia, that I interviewed in about 85 to 92, somewhere late 80s, and she had been married to the same guy for 30 years. They had grown up together. They had what we call in psychiatry a sturge marriage, which is an ancient Greek word that has to do with where kids on an adjacent farm will grow up as playmates, right, a boy and a girl, and then they just sort of evolve into a marriage. And she had that, and they had been known each other all their lives, and then they just and so he died very quickly of a very rampant lung cancer, and she was there with him. And she said, yeah, his whole life sprang up around her in a vivid visionary form, and that she was able to converse with him, and it's like they were looking at the same panels or the same scenes because they would talk about them as they came up.
Wow. This is absolutely fascinating. So
it is.
I know that there's great purpose behind each of you being involved in this research. In the next minute and a half, can you share what's your high-level goal here?
My goal is I want to know what is. So many people want to know that there's an afterlife.
Right.
I want to know whether there's an afterlife. What interests me is what is true. And I'm just astonished as a lover of philosophy that some people just have an idea of what they think they want to be, and then they will come up with some argument for that, and that's no fun to me. I want to find out what is.
Right.
And I can honestly tell you that I always just assumed I was not religious, except a slight smidgen of Judaism through my aunt and a lot from my dad's friends. But I just grew up mystified by this whole, especially, I just don't understand religion. But so this has been a hard slog for me. I had grown accustomed to the idea that death is time limited, or life is time limited, and you has a beginning and a middle and an end. But I give up. I've just seen so many things. I give up. I don't know what else to say.
Right. And Lisa, in 20 seconds or less, what's your high-level purpose?
I have to say very similarly to Raymond, just discovering what is so much more exciting than having a belief that you have to adhere to. And life, the mystery is so huge. And the more I learn, the more in awe I become in doing this work. So I love what Raymond says, what is really the most exciting quest, I think, and purpose.
And I think about us on this planet right now going through a transition of sorts, and sometimes it's chaotic. But to have more of what is relating to dying and death does play and will play a very important role. And I thank each of you for showing up to help us with this and to do your play these really important roles. Dr. Raymond Moody and Lisa Smartt, thank you both for joining us here today.
Thank you both, and thanks so much to the listeners. And I hope some of you will be interested to join us in our program. So thank you so much.
And again, it's theuniversityofheaven.com. And thank you for joining us here today. I look forward to talking to you again soon. Bye, everybody.
You've been listening to the Christine Upchurch Show, stellar conversations to illuminate your journey. Each week, this show engages some of the most outstanding visionaries on the planet in lively dialogue to inspire you to become that bright light you're meant to be. Join Christine every Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific Time on KKNW, AM 1150, and TransformationTalkRadio.com. For more information about the transformative healing work of Christine, visit www.stellarreflections.com. And for weekly topics, visit www.transformationtalkradio.com.